All right, here we are at the end of the 11 a.m. turn, and the French assault has begun. They're seeing this British 4th Division arriving from the north, and they decided not to wait for the artillery to set up. They needed to get in there and disrupt these Spanish positions before they could be strengthened by the arrival of those British. But before that actually happened, over here on the left, we did have the French cavalry out here about to activate, and we had Spanish cavalry activations. The Spanish activation cannon was drawn first, and they decided that they needed to disrupt this French advance. So they launched some charges on the left-hand side of this French infantry of Gerard's corps, and they actually succeeded quite well. They caused a 2-attacker, 2-defender hit on this far left French infantry unit. There was also a morale check required. The French failed that. They were disordered, and they then routed. It was a stroke of Spanish luck, and the cavalry pursued. They were already reduced, and that pursuit eliminated one of those French units. So that was a little bit of luck by the Spanish. They rolled pretty well to force that result. And they brought up some of the rest of their cavalry to support. The French then immediately countered, and seeing this exhausted cavalry, they launched their own countercharge on the Spanish, with generally positive results. They have disordered. The Spanish then countercharged that countercharge, and the Spanish were disordered in those two subsequent combats. So a lot of exhausted Spanish cavalry around here. This is a French unit under that exhausted marker, but the Spanish are, I think, all disordered. Sorry. So that, yes, they disrupted the French attack. Yes, they eliminated a French unit, but they've also they're in the thick of the French lines and exhausted, disordered, and in a fair bit of trouble because they're now surrounded by quite healthy French cavalry. After that all took place, the French then launched their assaults on the Spanish infantry lines. Now, they launched an assault mainly against this raw Spanish infantry. There was an assault launched here and another assault in the centre here, both of which were pretty easy successes. Both Spanish defenders failed their role to stand. One of them was already disordered, and so they routed. The other one failed their role to stand, became disordered, and then suffered on the assault table, and then routed as well. So you can see those Spanish units behind the lines. Elsewhere, we have Wells' brigade moving through the brush again. They are going to try and hit the Spanish on their left flank over here. But the Portuguese are also moving up, and they have decided to cross the Rio Albuera to threaten, to do something in this battle. They're sitting out there on this flank, and the French have said, no, we're not going to head out that way. We're going to fight the Spanish. So the Portuguese are saying, well, we want to be in the fight, and they're going to move into this open ground here. Elsewhere, the 4th Division continues to move up, and that's about it. So the fighting has begun out here between the French and the Spanish, and the French are feeling very confident that they can just clear the Spanish from the field. They are not putting up, apart from that one Spanish charge, their infantry their raw infantry, I should say, is not putting up much of a fight. We get to see how this more experienced and veteran Spanish forces fare in combat, and they do have a bit of an advantage out there, so they may perform better in the coming turns. That's the end of the 11 a.m. turn. All right, here we are at the end of the 11:20 a.m. turn, and it was a pretty good turn for the French. As you can see on the left here, they focus on cavalry activations. They activated 2 separate cavalry units, and a third received a light cavalry activation. And they fortunately received these activations pretty early in the turn, and they were able to catch the Spanish cavalry before they could pull back. And they didn't eliminate them, but they routed. You can see behind the lines here all that Spanish cavalry Didn't stand a chance. Just they're small units. You can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 versus the much stronger French cavalry units, and they have lower morale as well. Not that really played a factor. It was more French numerical superiority against these already disordered Spanish units. So that's all that happened, really. Just a lot of French activations out here. The Spanish, I had placed a Spanish cavalry activation marker, but they didn't get a chance to activate. They were routed very quickly. And elsewhere, just some shuffling of units, small French cavalry moving up in the rear. And Beresford's sort of his command is shifting over to help the Spanish. And that's about all that happened that turn. Yeah, just a lot of French cavalry action. You can see them pushing way up on that left-hand side. All right, that's it to the end of the 11:20 a.m. turn. All right, we're now at the end of the 11:40 turn, and things are just going from bad to worse for the Spanish. They just cannot hold their positions. This raw infantry down the bottom here in particular is just so weak. They fire with one basically strength point. They melee with 1 point per increment. So these units down here, this raw infantry at strength 4, there was one here is strength 3. They defend at a strength of 3. Each increment is only worth 1 melee point versus the sort of 8 for the French. Each increment is worth 2 melee points, strength points when meleeing. So they can't fire, they can't melee, and they have terrible morale. So the French are just launching assaults all up and down the line and causing, again, more rout. I haven't actually moved these units yet, but I'll do that in a moment. More routs and destruction of the Spanish infantry. We had one unit here surrender. This is the last roll, actually, when the French rolled 66 for their assault roll. Elsewhere, up in the north here, it was interesting. So the French launched some assaults down along here and began to move through the centre here, and the Spanish thought that they would try to hit the French, and they did have some success. You can see here 2 routed French units. The Spanish hit the line along here. Well, they had some success. They also had some failures. Some of these routed units were from their assaults along here. These are the better Spanish, the regular Spanish infantry. They do get morale bonuses. I guess what they're trying to do here is slow down the French, stop their assaults, and wait for the 4th Division to come up. What's hurting all of this is the weather. It's been foggy and rainy for several hours. I keep rolling fog and or rain. Not the really bad torrential rain, just enough to slow down movement, such that the 4th Division is plodding through the rain and the mud and taking a long time to get up to help the Spanish. We also have, I think this is Whirl's Brigade. Yeah, Whirl's Brigade has now crossed the Arroyo Chicapiana and are about to strike the Spanish left flank. The British are also suffering from command problems. I haven't been able to... So I sent out Beresford's aides de camp to activate the Portuguese a few turns ago, and they're still making their way back so they can be sent out again to activate. I was trying to keep Beresford close to this 4th Division so that he could continue to activate them as a corps. I'd really like to get the Portuguese moving south to help hit the French down here. Meanwhile, the British just along the line here, holding that river, doing nothing. The Arroyo, doing nothing. And also Spanish cavalry have pulled back behind this little part of the Arroyo de Valdesevilla. So, things not going well for the Spanish. They are just cannon fodder, roadblocks in the way of this, very weak roadblocks in the way of this French advance. They just cannot put up a fight. And the French are feeling pretty good about the focus of their attacks. I think they've made the right decision here to shift out to the southwest and hit the Spanish instead of the British. All right, so again, I'll do some retreats, but that's the end of the 11:40 a.m. turn. We're just on midday.